First of all, I want to thank you all for coming. Again, we thank Exelon for being the host speaker, but also we have a couple just for this event. One is Roca, and I'd like the representative of Roca to come up and say 2 words, maybe 4, about the organization. Because one of the things I find in my overall view of the organization is that we're moving into a new frontier, and I like to make sure that when people pony up some dollars to participate, they get fair value. And so, Roca representative. 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Jason Owens. I'm the Assistant Director for Crisis and Safety Management at Roca, Chelsea. 2 minutes. I didn't do anything. All right. So we work with high-risk youth in the city of Chelsea. Our Chelsea site currently serves 12 cities and towns, so that's 17 to 24-year-old males that are criminally justice involved, have some mental health issues, substance abuse issues, aging out of DYS, and some of them coming out of the criminal justice system. So our goal is to work them. Every single individual young man that comes through our program actually gets 4 years of services at Roca. The first 2 years are very intensive. The second 2 years are followed through for all the hard work we did with them in the first 2. So culinary arts school, work transitional employment program, maintenance training school, all kinds of OSHA construction certifications, forklift certifications. We do, at the pleasure of some district courts, we sometimes are allowed to advocate for an alternative sentence in lieu of prison, and we have great partnerships throughout the city of Chelsea, our strongest being the Chelsea Police Department, Chief Kais, and second being the courts. They've been unbelievably gracious with us to help our young men stay out of harm's way in poverty. We also serve, I think we have currently 212 young moms on a caseload too, so if you add their kids, that's probably upwards around 500. So it's a busy center. We're an organization that's been in this city for 30 years. We've been up and running for 30 years, and it's an organization that I've been working at for 13. I absolutely love my job, love what I do, even though I come from the other side of the bridge. I've made Chelsea my home, and I guess that's 2 minutes. Anyone has any other questions, I'd love to give you a card. You can come by the building, I'll give you a tour, and that goes for anybody here. So thank you very much.
And our other sponsor is Harbor Food and Equipment. Is there a representative? Okay, moving right along. One of the things, this isn't the first time I'm speaking before this body in this capacity, but one of the things we're trying to do at the Chamber is become a little more efficient and effective in the area of communication. And we're working on some interesting ideas that I think you'll find helpful over the next few months. But the purpose of the Chamber is to organize, to advance the general welfare and the prosperity of the greater Chelsea area so that its citizens in all areas of business community shall prosper. The Chamber will promote strong relations and communications between businesses, government, nonprofits, and the community to enhance the economic, civic, commercial, cultural, industrial, and educational interests of the area. And with this purpose, what I plan to do is reach out to all of our members to become a little more active. We need a lot of help. So maybe you might have someone that would like to be on our greeters committee, I always find it helpful when I go into a room where I don't know anybody or know a few people to be introduced. That would be beneficial. And some of our standby committees, Sue Gallant and Renee, have been very extremely helpful in the pot of gold, but we'll be looking for more volunteers. So again, if you can be helpful in this occasion, it would be extremely helpful. The other thing interesting is the fact that one of our members got an acknowledgement, and I'd like to it is Jean Brooks Landscape. The organization, that company is relatively new to our membership. They've been in business for a number of years in Cambridge. They just relocated to Chelsea. But in the Boston Home magazine, titled The Face of Women in Design edition, this week, she received the Woman in Design Award. So again, that will be going out on the wires hopefully tomorrow, if not later today if Rich gets back. The other thing too is Green Roots is having their annual meeting tomorrow night down on the creek. If you have time, 6 o'clock, I'm told you'll have a delightful time there as well. Now, with regards to our guest speaker, who first became famous for her athletic abilities, I gather, and it was via a recent incident where when she received her scholarship to, her athletic scholarship to college, that she felt that, gee, only 3 or 4 women got an award, and felt that the 75 full-time male football team should have. And she had an attorney, and he threatened the athletic director to file a Title IX lawsuit. Thus, she became very intrigued with law, and she has done an excellent track record. As an attorney friend of mine said, sometimes attorneys don't actually say things that you agree with, but the law is the law. Now I have a scripted, and I'll be very brief, from the DA's office, and we'll have our guest speaker. Suffolk County District Attorney Rachel Rollins is the Chief Law Enforcement Officer for Boston, Chelsea, Revere, and Winthrop. She is the first woman elected to that position and the first woman of color to ever serve as a Massachusetts District Attorney. For 20 years, she has worked in the field with the National Labor Relations Board, an attorney with Bingham McCutcheon, and as a federal prosecutor at the United States Attorney's Office in Boston. She has served as general counsel for the Mass Department of Transportation and the Mass Bay Transit Authority, and also chief legal counsel for the Massachusetts Port Authority. She was appointed by Governor Deval Patrick to the Judicial Nominating Commission, a past president of the Massachusetts Black Lawyers Association, and served a 3-year term on the Boston Bar Association Council. She is a proud resident of Roxbury, and she lives with her daughter, 2 nieces, and a French bulldog. Cassius.
So just to clarify, we did sue the University of Massachusetts, but it was because they cut 3 women's teams. And our men's football team that hadn't won a game in several years and had 75 full scholarships didn't lose a single scholarship. So we did get a lawyer and threatened a Title IX lawsuit and then got our women's teams reinstated. There wasn't an award, but I'll take it. Thank you for inviting me. Chelsea and my campaign had a very special place in my heart. I know you guys recognize that in Suffolk County, everyone believes Boston is just Suffolk County. And I'd love to remind them that there are 3 other wonderful places that are also part of Suffolk County as well, and they keep referring just to Boston. So you guys were very good to me. I have friends that I've worked with before at the Mass Department of Transportation. I had a deep respect for Chief Kai's, having heard about all the wonderful work you guys do with the hub here. I had heard about the urban legend and then actually got to sit down and see the great work you do. Boston is now trying to pilot what you do in 2 locations, in Jamaica Plain and East Boston. We are not doing as well as you guys are doing here, but we are going to continue to try to replicate the exceptional work you guys do for the people of Chelsea and treating them like people, right? And understanding that, you know, as wonderful as all of us in this room are, we have often, I'm assuming many of us have, through no fault of our own or no good deed of our own, were born into families that gave us opportunities that many of the individuals that we come into contact might not have. And I'm not making any assumptions about anyone's life here. I'm sure we've all engaged in struggles, but I will not speak for the chief, but I can tell you as the DA that the people that we encounter in our municipal and district courts are often the individuals that any number of systems have failed. And although I will hear from you with some of the questions, which I am excited to take, about the fact that maybe I'm operating out of my lane and I need to just focus on being the DA and prosecuting people, the world is changing. And we need to look at mass incarceration. We need to look at the fact that many of these laws that were put into place to not benefit poor people. And I want you to see my brown face saying out loud to you, the people that are most impacted negatively by the criminal justice system, it has nothing to do with race and almost everything to do with poverty, right? If you can't afford somebody who can navigate fluently through the criminal justice system, you are at a significant disadvantage. I don't care what hue your skin is. If you have no money, the system does not work well for you, period, end of story. Now, I need to make sure I say the next group of people is overwhelmingly black and brown people, and they are overwhelmingly poor. But I need you to hear my voice say out loud that I recognize the first and foremost, the biggest group has nothing to do with race, ethnicity, background, and everything to do with access. So I am so excited that this is the place that recognizes that, and in one room puts all of the people that have all of the skill set to help individuals. Think about if we take one criminal defendant from Chelsea District Court and pull them out and did a study on them, it is likely, not necessarily proven, but likely that they will have either, their family will have either DCF in their life, they have touched the DYS system, they are on some sort of benefit that is given from the state, they might be on probation for something else. If it's a federal case, they might have federal probation, or they might have something in another jurisdiction because they got in trouble. What's beautiful about the hub is you bring all of those people around, have wraparound services, and literally walk out to those families, knock on doors and say, how can we help you? And I just came back, I will, jokingly, from a junket, which is what I was told, for 2 weeks. 20 of the progressive DAs in the United States, we went to Germany and Portugal. And we got to see how they handle what their criminal justice system is like. And I will start by saying the biggest disparity that we have from them is they have universal health care. So they're already starting with a different model that we are. And obviously they don't have the gun violence that we have. So I fully start with that piece. But there is a there is a humanization they have of the people of their country. And there's a nationalism that they have about, if you are German, we will take care of you. And that doesn't mean to the detriment of other people coming into the country, but no matter what crime you have committed in either of those countries, you vote in elections. So if you are convicted of homicide, or even a misdemeanor all the way up to a felony, you are still a citizen of Germany and you still have the right to vote. The way that they operate prisons there it's unbelievable. They have an open prison system, and they recognize that the overwhelming majority of people that we send away come back to us. And if we are treating them poorly or not getting them the services of their mental health issues, of which there are significant mental health issues, substance use disorder, and sometimes a dual diagnosis of both, or just poverty, we are sending them to a place where they are usually surrounded by people that are more violent than them, getting no treatment whatsoever, and then coming back into our communities, and we're surprised when we have a 67% recidivism rate. So those are some of the things that I think about as the DA who's been in this role for 5 months. It is part of why, and this is what I'd like to sort of talk to you guys a little bit about today, why I proposed some new thinking regarding the way we are going to approach crimes. And what I can tell you is the memo that I sort of wrote and presented, and I need you to hear me say, had hand-delivered to about 75 stakeholders, including Chief Kais, on the day that it was presented to my staff. This is aspirational. This is what I would like my administration and what I believe the criminal justice system can look like. None of this is written in stone, and if it is, I wrote it. So the stone can be broken or amended. And what I can tell you is these are guidelines for my 300 employees to live by, right? What are we doing when we see somebody who has one of the 3 ailments that I spoke about? Poverty, mental illness, or substance use disorder. If they fall into those 3 categories and they commit these 15 crimes that after many discussions with police officers, judges, prosecutors, criminal defense attorneys, and individuals returning to our community, so people with criminal justice, high-risk individuals that have touched the criminal justice system, what are the things that are clogging up our municipal and district courts? And it was overwhelmingly these 15 crimes. And please listen, all of you, when I say, this is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. If you actually read my memo, it is just if in the first, second, or maybe even third instance you've never been in trouble before and you're caught shoplifting, I can assure you, you're probably not going to even maybe not even get arrested the first time. If you speak to Commissioner Gross, if you speak to the other chiefs in Suffolk County, their policy is cuffs or handcuffs as a last resort. I'm simply saying the same thing, and we can hold people accountable. Accountability does not have to equal jail, right? What I'm saying is, if we haven't tried a civil stay-away order, and I get it, you might say like, oh, they don't work, or let's try that and see whether we can get this person some services. And if they show back up a week later, we're gonna know that. And we're gonna make sure that this person is clearly not listening to what it is we're saying, and we're gonna up the ante to the next level of what we do. But what I can promise you as small business owners is spending $55,000 a year to send that person to Nashua Street or South Bay is not fiscally responsible. I promise you that. And they are just going to come out more hardened, more addicted, more mentally ill, and come back and escalate whatever crime potentially they might do. So what I want, and with limited resources, as the district attorney, I need you to hear me say we have a 15 to 20% solve rate on non-fatal shootings. So I'm not good at math, but I promise you that is not good, right? We should be in the, I would like to be in the 70 to 80% solve rate of non-fatal shootings, because of course non-fatal shootings are what? A precursor to fatal shootings. Last night I received a phone call. We had our 15th homicide in Suffolk County since January 1st. We have over 1,000 unsolved homicides in Suffolk County. Luckily, not many are in Chelsea. Luckily, not many are in Winthrop or Revere. Overwhelmingly, they are in Boston. But those are 1,000 families that don't have answers yet. And I have to, with my limited resources, say, where am I going to put all of my money, right, in my office? And so what I can promise you, and I'd love to answer questions about the memo if you guys have them, or anything about my background, but is that this is a graduated, sort of sliding scale look at these 15 crimes. And if we see, and we are now trying to gather data, understanding, of course, that our computer system is from like 1854, but we are trying to compile data and look at who are the people we come in contact with, how quickly do they come back, or what we are proposing, is it working or not, and we will adapt appropriately. And I'm also making sure that I'm reaching out to Chief Kais and Chief Delahunty and why am I blanking on Guido? I was going to say Guido. Guido and Chief Gross, or Commissioner Gross. I'm speaking often to them, as well as the unions, to say, where are your pain points? 2 days ago, we were just in Chelsea District Court and met with Judge Mashera. We met with the Raj, who is Judge Brennan, and we also met with Judge Dolly, who's the chief of all of the district courts in Massachusetts, to say not only did I go into the first session and sit and watch in your beautiful courthouse, just my staff working, and went up to the second floor and walked into our office, but I also sat down and said, what is annoying you about my aspirational document? What is making your job harder? Because that was not my intention, right? What do you see that's working, what isn't? And they were wonderfully honest with me. And we are going to come back and we're going to adapt appropriately when we train our staff. And, you know, again, I feel like I need you to hear me say I'm somebody who can absolutely take constructive criticism, and maybe not even constructive criticism, and listen and adapt appropriately, because it was certainly not my intent to propose something that was going to make small business owners feel like they were not wanted, appreciated, or considered when I made my decision. But I want to make sure that I open it up to let you guys ask me some questions about some of the things I've said. Sir.
Rachel, you mentioned you went to Portugal. I heard that they were, I think, decriminalizing
Drugs.
drugs.
Yeah.
So that was about a year ago or two years ago. So can you tell me, based on your visit, what you saw, what you think?
Yeah, so if you didn't hear in the back, the two places we went were Germany and Portugal. Germany, we looked at their entire system, but overwhelmingly we're there just to look at how they envision prisons. There's opened and closed prisons. Portugal, we saw their entire criminal justice system too, but focused on, they have decriminalized drugs. And so what I think the misconception was when I went was, well, no one's in jail for drugs. You are still, they're arresting traffickers and distributors. If you're operating with contraband at that sort of level. But what's really wonderful is they recognize that it's a health issue. They're not having that conversation any longer. And I was in a room just about a year ago, where we had a sheriff and the then secretary of EOPS at the time sort of battling back and forth about whether it was a health issue or whether it was a criminal issue. And if we can't even start on the basis of understanding that it is obviously, at least to me, a health issue, and there's and self-disclosure here, I am the mother of a 15-year-old daughter and the guardian of 2 of my nieces, one of which is the result of the opioid crisis. And so my family has sectioned my younger sister. I know full well what it feels like to have a loved one that you are looking in their face and they are no longer the person that you are looking at, and it's really hard to believe that. But I've also been the person that knows that this individual is stealing from they engage in behavior that you can't, there's no one way to react to that. And different family members have different reactions to it, and there are many that believe this is intentional because they're still looking at the person as who they were. But what I can tell you is they look at it no different than cancer. They look at it no different than depression, right? They look at it as a DSM-5 diagnosed issue that we need doctors and mental health professionals assisting with. And it is actually beautiful to see how well they treat these people. There are medical vans that go around everywhere that administer methadone and assist them with, in the lifestyle that they lead. There are, any number of bumps and bruises or what they're having. They assist them with getting counseling. There's a group called Housing First, where if they come in contact with the criminal justice system and they're homeless, there's an organization that gets them housing. I know we have a lot of different nonprofits and organizations, but I don't know what the equivalent in Chelsea is to Mass Ave and Melanie and Cass in Boston, where we literally, it is just hundreds of people that are hurting, that you drive by every single day. I hope you don't have an equivalent location, but it's heart-wrenching to drive past that and to know that there are 30 nonprofits that are saying that they're working on this problem and not seeing any person out there working on this problem. So I think what they do differently is they really put their money where their mouth is, and they put significant dollars and have done the cost-benefit analysis of Housing First. It costs $22 a day to fund the entire organization and get the person housing. Now, in Boston, it's like $23,000 a day to live in Boston, right? But we can't maybe do that, but we have to think differently about if it's $55,000 a year to send you to South Bay, and that's just sending you there. That doesn't include the salary of my ADA that prosecuted you, the salary of the public defender that represented you, the salary of the judge, the police. If we look at what those numbers are, how can we think differently about this problem? How can we put that money in a different place and then capture that value somehow when I say to the governor or the mayor or the city managers, we saved you this much money by diverting these cases or getting these people the treatment they want. And they think about that very differently than we do. Anyone else?
I just wanted to offer one comment. So I went to Germany last year as well on
A junket?
yeah, well, it was an educational
Oh,
site.
you did?
But
Tom, we didn't pay for that.
No.
and at the end of the day, there was a lot of interesting things being done there, especially as it pertains to juveniles. But the caution for me was looking at the difference. Kind of a striking difference as far as you mentioned earlier. Violent crime is next to nothing.
Nothing.
Number one. And then number two, we talk about opioids. Here in the United States and certainly in Massachusetts, their heroin problem is 0.01.
Yeah, and they don't have fentanyl.
Exactly. So the thing is, they're prescribing ice when you get a sore elbow instead of opioids. So it's kind of, so you're going to get the takeaway from, especially from Germany, and try to kind of bring that in Mass.
It's hard.
A little bit challenging.
It's hard.
There's a lot going on.
So some of the DAs that I was with there were from San Francisco, Philadelphia, St. Louis, who were going to be, and the Bruins are going to be in St. Louis. But we had several people from Florida, Texas, but all over the United States. The DA in San Francisco thinks that possibly open prisons might be something he could consider there, or get his, whoever his equivalent is to the head of our Department of Corrections. I think we're doing, one of the things that I will admit that I don't think I think I understood it but really didn't, and of course the chief knows this as the chief of police. But a lot of people don't understand, sheriffs are elected, right? So Sheriff Tompkins is elected for 6 years, which I'm like, why did I not run for sheriff? But 4 years for me, but anyways, elected for 6 years. He is the House of Corrections. So overwhelmingly in the municipal courts and the district court, and you guys have a district court here in Chelsea, the municipal courts, we have 8 municipal courts under the Boston Municipal Court. You go to South Bay or Nashua Street to serve usually up to 2 or 2.5 years, but overwhelmingly it's smaller, 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, whatever. Everyone else is the Department of Corrections, which is an appointed position from the governor. And they run MCI Concord, MCI. And so what we have to look at is the conversation is usually with Sheriff Tompkins about, for us, the great things he's doing there. He has the peace unit. He's done a lot of he has programs where people can go in for addiction and get treatment for 28 days and leave. He's doing wonderful things. We need to make sure we're talking to our governor about what is the Department of Corrections doing, right? And because those overwhelmingly, of course, guys, are the more serious crimes. Those are the ones where I've indicted that up from municipal or district court up to superior court. And these are people that need more time, but overwhelmingly are presenting with, mental health issues, which I want to say out loud as well, is trauma, right? Like childhood, parents, and abandonment issues that you couldn't even comprehend, right? So I look at that and recognize there are significant differences between Germany and here, overwhelmingly guns and violence. But I will say, Chief, that I still think there are some things we could take away from them. And with Portugal, you're right, like they're not dealing with the volume that we are either. Sir.
Actually, just to make sure I wasn't misspeaking, I was told that there was a Time Magazine article in August of last year about how Portugal was dealing with drug addiction. And specifically, one of the things they were talking about was after they complete a 28-day program, they get them good paying jobs. And they found their, I don't think you call it recidivism, whatever you call it, relapse, rates are significantly lower than ours. So back to your point about poverty, I mean, how much can a district attorney's office really, you can't do anything about poverty. So what all the program, it seems like they still come, whenever they do get out of prison, they're coming back to poverty.
Right, but what I can do is there's not a single, so one of the great examples that Judge Bashara gave to me the other day was, Rachel, we don't care if you null pros. So null pros is, I'm the prosecution and I decide you aren't even gonna get up to the stand to get to the judge. We've decided to not prosecute prior to getting to a judge. If we're standing here in an arraignment and we ask Judge Bashara for a dismissal, that's his job to dismiss, or we can sort of null pros. I think for me, one of the things he said that was really helpful was when you null pros somebody and then turn to them and say, all right, you're free to go, and then sit back down, of course they're gonna think shoplifting is legal now. Right? Mm-hmm. Who's talking to this person to say, sir, we are not going to prosecute you right now because you don't have a criminal record. We don't want to make any assumptions about you, but here's some information about mental health, some other things. You need to hear me say that if this happens again, you might not be null pros. You might be prosecuted, and this is not a get out of jail free card. If it's his first time ever, I'm okay with that conversation. If it's pre-arraignment diversion, which is different, right? That's still me holding them away from the court system, because probation is responsible for diversion, and under the new crime bill, they should actually be reviewing at intake to see whether we can divert people out. But if I'm going to send them to a program, we have to have a conversation with them as well. We're just not doing a good job talking to people or explaining to them what their government does. And so I can tell you whether you think that's my role or not. It's not helping homelessness, but if I know of all of the nonprofits or the Department of Mental Health programs that are available, and there's someone who, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but everyone in this room would acknowledge there is some issue, cognitively or otherwise, with this individual, why wouldn't I instruct my either ADAs or victim witness advocates or whoever's in that courthouse to at least try to give them some information, right? And so what I can't do, sir, is be the person that says, it's not my job, because this has happened their whole life, right? It was somebody else's job 15 failures ago. And all I'm saying is we're going to pause for a minute and see if we can help, because we are very good at flinging people on the conveyor belt to go to jail. I can always revert back to that move. But right now we're going to try something a little bit different. Sir.
Rachel, so if you were to put a crystal ball, I'm going to shift the subject a little bit.
I love crystal balls.
Yes, I know. Good. I mean, you were to look at two major events that are happening or will be happening within our communities here. One is the marijuana laws, and the second one is the casino. How are you preparing for the eventuality of increase of both criminal elements that may sort of infiltrate towards the casino, and then the marijuana issue that some people assume will lead on to greater and bigger problems?
Well, it will, and I mean, I know the chief has to leave, but part of this is an example of sort of innovation and the world being a little bit faster than us, you know, creating all the systems we need. So we already know when well, hopefully this never happens, but when I'm drinking and I get pulled over, we know how to do a field sobriety test, and we know what, you know, alcohol smells like, or the blurry eyes. There are breathalyzers that we can use and others we can't, but that's a different story. But we understand alcohol. I think we don't yet have proper functions with respect to cannabis, and the chief can speak for a second about that. Not to mention, we're all, I mean, I'm old, I'm 48 years old, so I'm thinking about people like smoking a doobie. No, they're edibles. There are, you know, nobody says doobie anymore. Anyway, but you get it, right? You get it.
I'm 48.
Yeah, you said doobie, right? All right, but anyways, you get it. So, but my point is, there are edibles. There are things that happen. This is not, and let's not even start the discussion about children, right? When Chief Kai sees me walk out and hand a case of beer to a 12-year-old, you know, he hopefully thinks I'm 36, but he knows I'm older than 21, and that 12-year-old is a 12-year-old. And this is an obvious case of beer. But if it's me shaking your hand and there's something it's not even the same as a hand-to-hand sort of, you know, narcotics deal, potentially. So we have to really educate, you know, our law enforcement, including me and my ADAs, about how are we going to keep the community safe? Because we had a situation in Revere where somebody who was impaired significantly, not just with alcohol, but we believe also possibly marijuana or opioids, killed 2 children, and we are, you know, we're struggling with that. So, Chief, do you mind just explaining, if you pull me over and not like a Cheech and Chong puff of smoke comes out, look at me and think there's something wrong with me, you have to call a human, there's not a breathalyzer for marijuana. So do you mind?
So yeah, sure. I mean, there could be a portable breathalyzer, but the challenge is in terms of the amount of THC that's in someone's system, everyone's different. In terms of what level of THC someone would be presumed to be impaired, that's the challenge. The courts are looking at the scientific community, and they're basically looking out saying, what can we do? At what level is someone going to be impaired? They can't even agree.
Right, so there's like Mother Teresa to Snoop Dogg. Right? Like, this is very little, and this is everything you have.
The other challenge we have right now is in terms of, in the district courts, it's usually a district court offense, is the judges, some judges, and I don't know necessarily if this is the case in Suffolk, from what I hear, but we have individuals in the state police officers that are known as drug recognition experts.
Yes.
There's only about 200 out of 15,000 police officers, actually about 17,000 police officers, including the state police. 200 GREs, it's extensive 3-week training. At the end of the day, when an officer sees somebody and they're unsteady on their feet, bloodshot eyes, everything you indicated, they have probable cause, and they could get potentially probable cause to make an arrest. But then without that DRE to do an adequate evaluation, when it goes to court, these people aren't getting convicted.
Yeah.
And so right now, some judges will allow the testimony of a DRE, some will not. So
Yeah.
we're trying to get that straight.
So that's the marijuana piece. And then the other part, thank you, Chief. The other part is with respect to the casinos. I mean, let's not even talk about traffic, right? But we're also talking about all of the other elements of, you know, nonstop drinking, like no windows, so you don't even know. 4 o'clock, right? So we're, you know, and I know Mayor Walsh is sort of pushing back a little bit on that, but we're going to have an uptick in that. And how are we going to manage? You know, you are an impacted, even though there's casinos in Everett, right? And they're claiming it's every single sort of surrounding community is going to be dealing with those collateral consequences. I think what we need to do is start meeting and figuring out if it's going to be an uptick, do I need to make sure that we have not only more staff in Chelsea, but more importantly, if we're doing more educational work about these are the crimes that we're going to be charging people with, and warning people about what is to come. Back to your point, sir, I think my job is really far more outward facing now than it has been in the past, where I have to educate people about what is coming or what they could potentially be charged with as a result of certain behaviors. And we can do that with adults, but I also think it's really important that we start going into schools and talking a little bit more. Some of the other things, and I'll be with you, is we're talking to, oh, am I rambling? I love to stand up. All right, anyways, let me get you quickly, and then, sir, I know you had a question too. Too quick.
Okay.
Yes.
I own a store in Bellingham Square.
Yeah.
And a food store, which is heavily trafficked. And there's people that come in and they shop there and they don't want to pay, but that's fine. But the issue was the drug, how do you call that?
Possession or?
No, the drug, methadone.
Yes.
We have a methadone clinic and we have things have progressed. And our city manager here, when we started getting a lot of those folks, I called them. And we have them. Okay. I haven't called you in a while.
Did you hear that? He said thank you. All right, go ahead, sir.
Things has progressed. Downtown Chelsea,
Okay.
Bellingham. I can see that because I'm the receiver of those elements. My question to you is the business owners, because this is a complex system we live in.
Mm-hmm.
We shoot ourselves in the foot as a society. I mean, it's crazy to me that they put marijuana legal and now we have to arrest the guy. But that's a different conversation. But what can we do, particularly the Chelsea Chamber of Commerce, to inform the business owners like myself on Broadway on these issues, on education?
Yeah, so I mean, what I can do is we're having on June 19th, one of the things I ran on, sir, was there's no State of the Union for the DA, and probably because no one would want to really listen, but because it's different now, I've said quarterly I'm going to go out into the community and talk about what it is that the office does, but specifically when I go into different communities, it's not just general. My first one was in Roxbury. My next one is June 19th here in Chelsea. So we will be here. We're going to start publicizing that soon. We're going to make sure that we know the statistics for what's happening in Chelsea District Court. We're going to make sure that we're talking about the issues that you discussed, or I'll hopefully be speaking with the city manager and the chief before that to say, what do you need us to talk about to your community? And then very importantly, and I will get to you in a moment, is that Chelsea is actively involved in a lawsuit that I am a named person in regarding ICE. And we have chosen to use the proper forum, which is the court, to challenge what we believe is happening. So we'll be talking about some of those things as well. But part of what I'm going to do to educate is actually get out of my seat at One Bullfinch Place in Boston and come to events like this, and then also have community meetings. So June 19th will be in Chelsea, and then we have another one in 4 months that we're hoping is going to be in either Winthrop or Revere or somewhere else.
So our job, Chelsea Chamber, is to bring those business
You bet,
owners.
you bet. To yell
that
at me
meeting,
about shoplifting, do it.
And Carlos, you have to convince
No, we'll get
Spanish
them.
owners in Chelsea to come to the
And
meeting.
we always have interpreters of different languages, and we have snacks, which is the most important. So, sir, I know I'm going to wrap up, but if you want to.
Just a quick question about, based on the process you're running, are the prisons or places where people are incarcerated at capacity in this area? And will this alleviate it even further? Because it seems, we're at the point where we're trying to, as a community or a population, reduce the pressure on them.
Absolutely. So no, the good news is incarceration is actually down in Massachusetts, which we should be really proud of, number one. But the thing that's not great is the racial disparities are not down, right? So if black people make up 17% of the population, but are 60% of the people that are incarcerated, we have to look at those disparities. But what I will say is you hit the nail on the head. Prisons don't get to transform off an arm when they start having less prisoners in them. They still have to run that entire prison, even with the empty beds that they have in there. So we are looking, I know that there are some sheriffs that, for example, will get ICE detainees and they get paid by the federal government per the day to hold somebody there. But we are not at full capacity, and we have to start thinking about that's, again, if it's a sheriff, House of Corrections or Nashua Street, that's Sheriff Tompkins. But if we're talking about Shirley the Shirley Max, we would have to talk to the governor and the chief of EOPS, the Executive Office of Public Safety, to talk about, are we going to start trying to shut down one or two of the facilities? The other thing you should know is there's only one facility where women can go, right? So it's really tough. It's great that the number of women prisoners is going, in Massachusetts at least, they're not as many. But sadly, women nationwide are the fastest growing group of individuals that are being incarcerated. And then with all the other impacts of that, overwhelmingly they're the sort of primary caretaker or the custodial parent of children. So we're looking at a lot of different things there, but it's a big problem. And then we have great corrections officers that do an incredibly hard job, just like our police officers. But when we look at the ratio of 5 prisoners to 1 corrections officer, I say back to people, what's the ratio of teachers to students in your school, right? 1 to 28, right, or 25. I want that flipped, right? I don't want all the money going in the back end when people have already, quote unquote, failed. I want us to start thinking about how are we going to be fiscally responsible and putting money into hope and dreams and possibilities instead of probation and incarceration and recidivism.
Am I hogging? You can take it.
Yes, I just have a couple of words. One is, I don't know how many of you read the May 2nd edition of the Chelsea Record, but there was an excellent article here about your organization and you. And one of the things that sort of caught my eye was the fact relative to the positive attitude that you wake up every day, everything, that's going to be perfect, but you have to have a positive attitude. And guess what? You can give out things and it doesn't cost you anything. Gee, you did a great job. Gee, that's good. When you go into Market Basket and the cashier is going like this, you say, hi Mary, you're doing a good job today. Simple. Cost how much?
Zero.
Zero. I kissed the Blondie Stone more than twice, so you have to forgive me. Go now. Yes. Okay, we have to raffle off. Rich wants to raffle off.
And I would like to ask you.
Oh, that's right.
Now, I don't know if this is gonna whet your appetite for the casino or anything like that.
No whammies.
So we've got a $25 gift certificate to El Pozo Mexican Grill, courtesy of our member El Pozo, and Joe Carrera is in the house.
Joe, stand up so everybody knows you.
And since it is pollen season, and if you drive a dark car, you absolutely know that, you've got a $39 gift card to Scrub and Dub car washes to get all that pollen off your car. And
All right, let's do it.
the winner is.
Thank you.
All right, here we go. 379-102.
And now, a gift for our speaker, Chelsea Chamber of Commerce, Chelsea Clark.
That's right. Amazing.
Instructions on how to use it.
I hope I can figure this out.
We thank you, and we will take you up, because education is important. And again, as I said in my earlier remarks, we're looking for people in the organization. Sometimes the gender bias is still there, so if you pick up what I'm saying, if you have some people in your organization, we would love to have them participate. Thank you, and have a good long.